They said no army could cross the Alps. They said Rome could not be defeated. And yet, in the winter of 218 BC, out of snow and silence, came war elephants. For nearly 2 decades, one man would haunt the Roman Republic so completely that mothers were said to hush their children with a single warning: Hannibal is at the gates. This is the story of Rome's greatest nightmare, and the genius who nearly broke an empire before it was even born. In the 3rd century before Christ, the Mediterranean world was not yet ruled by Rome. It was contested. 2 powers stood at the center of that struggle: the rising Roman Republic, disciplined and relentless, and the wealthy maritime empire of Carthage, a city of merchants, sailors, and generals, built on trade stretching from North Africa to Spain. Their first great war, the First Punic War, had ended in humiliation for Carthage. Rome had seized Sicily. Carthage had paid crushing indemnities. Pride had been wounded. And in that atmosphere of resentment and ambition, a boy stood beside his father. His name was Hannibal Barca. According to later Roman historians, his father Hamilcar took him to an altar and made him swear an oath: eternal hatred for Rome. Whether legend or truth, the vow would define his life. But hatred alone does not make a genius. Hannibal was not merely a man seeking revenge. He was a strategist who understood something fundamental. Rome's strength was not its city, it was its alliances. If you wanted to defeat Rome, you did not simply march on its walls, you broke the system that sustained it. And so, as a young commander in Iberia, modern-day Spain, Hannibal learned war not as a Roman did, but as a master of adaptation. He fought tribal warriors, studied terrain, commanded diverse troops: Libyans, Iberians, Numidians. He learned flexibility. Rome relied on structure. Hannibal relied on imagination. The spark came in 219 BC, when Hannibal besieged the city of Saguntum, a Roman ally in Spain. Rome demanded he withdraw. He refused. War followed. But instead of waiting for Roman legions to invade Africa or Spain, Hannibal made a decision so audacious, it defied logic. He would bring the war to Italy, and he would do it the hard way. With perhaps 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and nearly 40 war elephants, Hannibal marched north. He crossed the Ebro River, subdued hostile tribes, then pushed into Gaul. Losses mounted, ambushes slowed him, supplies dwindled, and then came the Alps. Even today, crossing those mountains in winter is dangerous. In 218 BC, it was madness. Ice shattered beneath men and animals. Narrow paths collapsed into ravines. Hostile tribes attacked from above. Horses slipped. Elephants panicked. Soldiers froze. By the time Hannibal descended into Italy, he had lost perhaps half his army. What remained was not the force he had started with. It was something sharper, hardened, focused, desperate, and dangerous. Rome did not expect him. They expected Carthage to fight at sea. They expected Spain to be the battlefield. They did not expect an army emerging from the north. The first Roman army sent against him at the river Trebia underestimated him. Hannibal understood terrain. He understood patience. He hid troops in a concealed position. He provoked the Romans into crossing icy waters at dawn, hungry and cold. Then he struck from multiple sides. The Roman army collapsed. But what came next shocked everyone. The following year, at Lake Trasimene, Hannibal set one of the greatest ambushes in military history. Using fog and geography, he lured a Roman force into a narrow defile between hills and water. Then, at his signal, thousands of Carthaginian troops descended from concealed positions. The Romans had no room to maneuver, no time to form ranks. It was slaughter. An entire Roman army was wiped out in a matter of hours. Panic spread through Rome. The Republic had faced defeats before, but not like this. Not so complete, not so humiliating. The Senate appointed a dictator, Quintus Fabius Maximus. Fabius understood something crucial. Hannibal wanted decisive battles, so he refused to give them. He shadowed Hannibal, harassed him, cut off supplies, avoided open confrontation. Romans mocked him as the delayer, but he was buying time. Time for Rome to adapt. Time for Rome to survive. Still, political pressure built. Rome demanded action. In 216 BC, Rome assembled one of the largest armies it had ever fielded, perhaps 80,000 men, and marched to confront Hannibal near the town of Cannae. This would be the moment. This would crush the invader. Instead, it became legend. Hannibal arranged his army in a curious formation. His center was deliberately weak, composed of Gauls and Iberians in a convex shape. His strongest troops were on the flanks. As the Romans advanced, their massive infantry pushed against Hannibal's center. And slowly, deliberately, that center gave ground. It bent inward. The Romans pressed harder, believing victory was near. But this was the trap. Hannibal's African infantry on the flanks pivoted inward. His cavalry, having defeated the Roman horsemen, struck from behind. The Roman army was surrounded, completely. In military terms, it was a double envelopment, the most devastating maneuver imaginable. By day's end, tens of thousands of Romans lay dead. It was one of the worst defeats in Roman history. Rome was shattered. Southern Italian cities joined Hannibal. For a moment, a brief, fragile moment, it seemed Rome might fall. And yet, Hannibal did not march on the city. Why? Historians still debate this. He lacked siege equipment. His army was exhausted. Reinforcements from Carthage were uncertain. Rome still had manpower. But the hesitation changed everything. Rome refused to surrender. Instead of suing for peace, it raised new legions. It adopted Fabian tactics once more, avoiding large engagements, attacking Hannibal's allies, cutting his supply lines. Rome could replace its losses. Hannibal could not. This was the paradox of his genius. He could win battles like no one else, but he could not break Rome's political will. Years passed. Hannibal roamed Italy, winning engagements, outmaneuvering generals, maintaining an army deep in enemy territory. But Rome adapted. It attacked Carthaginian holdings in Spain. It struck in Sicily, and eventually, under a young general named Publius Cornelius Scipio, it carried the war to Africa itself. Scipio had studied Hannibal. He understood his tactics, and in 202 BC, near Zama in North Africa, the two greatest commanders of their age finally faced one another. This time, Hannibal commanded newly raised troops, including war elephants once more. Scipio was prepared. He opened lanes in his formation, allowing the elephants to pass through with minimal damage. He used superior cavalry, Numidians who once fought for Hannibal, to outflank the Carthaginians. For the first time in his career, Hannibal was defeated decisively. Carthage sued for peace. The Second Punic War was over. Rome had survived, but survival came at a cost. The war transformed Rome from a regional power into a Mediterranean superpower. Its military doctrine hardened. Its foreign policy grew more aggressive, and Carthage would never recover. As for Hannibal, he did not die on the battlefield. He returned to Carthage and became a political reformer, attempting to stabilize finances and resist Roman influence. Rome feared him even then. Eventually, forced into exile, he wandered from court to court, advising kings still plotting against Rome. When Roman agents finally cornered him in Bithynia, he chose poison over capture. He would not be paraded in a Roman triumph. Even in death, he denied them that satisfaction. So why did Rome fear him for decades? It was not merely because he killed Romans. It was because he exposed Rome's vulnerability. He proved the Republic could bleed. He demonstrated that discipline could be outmaneuvered. He forced Rome to evolve. Without Hannibal, Rome might have grown complacent. Without Hannibal, perhaps Rome never becomes the empire that later dominates Europe, North Africa, and the Near East. In trying to destroy Rome, he strengthened it. That is the tragedy of his brilliance. Hannibal Barca remains one of history's greatest military minds,